Wonderful. Right. Welcome, everybody. Great to see a nice full room, which is good. Um, Today, I'm going to take you through the 7 most common deadly sins in the world of GDPR and how you can avoid them. And I might throw in a bonus one or two as we go along as well. Who knows? Yeah, I'm Keith from Insurity. We believe in making things fun. Our motto is, if it's fun, it gets done. If it's a bore, it's a chore. So let's make it fun. And fun at the moment is that this doesn't want to move on to the next slide. So give me a second here. Let's get rid of that. Right. Okay. So what we're going to cover today is misusing customer data, not tracking consent, having weak security systems, failing to honor data subject rights, holding on to data for too long, not doing data protection impact assessments, which often means you're not thinking about privacy by design, and not having a good GDPR culture in your business. And then we should have time for some quick Q&As at the end. So, talk first about misusing customer data. One of the biggest GDPR sins. Oh, come back. One of the biggest GDPR sins is using personal data in ways that people didn't agree to. Always check that, are we using this data for the purpose we originally collected it for? And if the answer to that is no, then you really need to stop and reassess what you're doing with that data. So when you're looking through your data, and this is creating something called the Article 30 register, the ROPA register, the Register of Processing Activities, important part of GDPR, is about defining and documenting the purpose of your data collection. And that's a number of reasons. First of all, it's just from a sheer point of view that you can't protect what you don't know you have. And too many times when I go in to talk to organizations, we start mapping out the data and we get so far through it and that's all fine. And then suddenly somebody would go, oh, what about that spreadsheet on that laptop in the cupboard that we get out once a year and look at, and then we update it and then we put the laptop back in the cupboard again. Those sort of things are where the real danger lies. The other thing is using the principle of data minimization. You really should be collecting only what you need. You might want to collect all sorts of information about your data subjects, be they your employees, your customers, your trustees, whoever, your donors, whoever. But in reality, the law says that you should use only the minimum amount of data you need to do what you need to do. Make sure you have a clear privacy notice that explains how the data is used. Write your privacy notice in clear English. Don't write it in legalese, because we're all guilty in the world of GDPR. I think that sometimes we can get hooked up on legalese and the general public don't understand it. And if they don't understand it, it might as well not be there. And the chances are is that if the general public don't understand your privacy notice, your staff probably don't understand it either. And that's when mistakes happen, because they just don't understand what they should be doing. And then make sure you have a legal basis for each bit of data you're using. People think about legal basis, about consent, but consent's not the only legal basis. There are 6 legal bases for handling information. And so make sure that you have the right legal basis for whatever data it is you're handling. And it might be different. It might be you have more than one legal basis that applies to certain pieces of information. There might be information that you hold because you've got consent for it, but in fact, also you have a contract with that person, so you can rely on the contractual basis to process that data. So talking about consent, the thing most people get wrong with consent, in my experience, is not that they don't ask for consent when they need to. Often they ask for consent when they don't need to. Excuse me. But they don't track where and when someone gave consent. So it's not enough to just say, oh, we have consent from that person. But where did they give you consent? When did they give you consent? How did they do it? Was it a tick box on the website? Did they sign a document? How did they give you consent? And this is becoming especially true now for charities, because the new Data Use and Access Act, which has just come into force, or is gradually coming into force as we go through this year, but this bit is already in force, allows charities to say if someone's been a donor to you and they've given you some money, then you can effectively take that as soft opt-in for consent. But you still need to have a record of when they did that. So it's not enough just to say, oh, well, that person donates money every year. So because of that, we're going to send them marketing material, and we can, because under the new rules, there's soft opt-in. If you can't say when that soft opt-in happened. So keep timestamp records of when and how consent was given. The other thing is making opt-ins clear and unambiguous. People should know what they're opting in to. Are they opting into marketing? Are they opting in to provide you with research data? What are they opting in for? And again, one of the other things is that the rules say that it must be as easy to opt out as it was to opt in. So if all someone had to do to opt in was tick a box, all they need to opt out is remove the tick from the box or tick a different box. So if you're relying on consent for your legal basis for processing, and you can't prove someone consented to your emails or your data collection, then you're in trouble. Many businesses assume consent, but GDPR requires clear, recorded and unambiguous agreement. A simple, I think they opted in, won't cut it. So track it, record it, and always offer an easy way to opt out. Next one is weak security systems. Weak security is an open door for hackers. And under GDPR, a data breach isn't just an IT issue, it's a legal one. So encrypt your data, strengthen your passwords, and make cybersecurity training mandatory for your staff. A small investment in security now saves huge fines potentially in the future, and more importantly, saves the damage to your reputation. If you don't believe that your reputation will be damaged by GDPR issues, look at what's happened to Jaguar Land Rover. Jaguar Land Rover failed to protect people's data. I suspect in the fullness of time, it's probably going to come out that all their customers' data has been affected, and they are suffering reputationally for that, but they're also suffering massively financially because they've now had something like 6 weeks when they've not produced a single vehicle. And it's not just that they're not producing vehicles, they're not purchasing the spare parts either, which is why the government's had to step in and give them an emergency loan. That's an extreme. You're probably not going to get to that stage, hopefully, anyway. But do think about security. That I'm going to be totally upfront in that if someone's determined to steal your data, your personal data, they will. And it doesn't matter how much protection you put around it. I would liken it to a car. You can have a really, really valuable car, and you can say, no, I'm going to make my car so secured. I'm going to put alarms on it, I'm going to put tracking on it. No one's going to be able to steal it. Great. Until the day somebody arrives with a lorry with a crane on the back, and they just lift your car off the road and put it on the back of the lorry, and it's gone. And the same is true with data. If people are determined to steal it, they will. But most people aren't that determined. They're actually just looking for easy meat. And so, whilst you can't make your data impossible to steal, and I define it to say that our data is 100% possible to steal, you make it more difficult than the data either side of it. Just like think of your car in the car park, you can't make your car impossible to steal. You can make it much more difficult to steal than the two cars either side of it. And thieves, bad actors, in whatever vein they are, whether they're car thieves or whether they're data thieves, want an easy life. And so they're going to go for the one that they can get into and be away quickly. So do use encryption for sensitive data. Do implement multi-factor authentication. Everybody should be doing that now. And I know it can be a pain. I accept it can be a pain. Although I'm a professional in this field, I get frustrated just as much as everybody else when, you're going through something and it says, we've sent a code to your registered device, and you're thinking, particularly if you're like me and you've got 3 or 4 devices, you're thinking, which bloody device was it that I registered with them? So you're suddenly looking on each of the screens to see if there's a message from this app so that you can get in. We as a business, we actually had this problem a few weeks ago. I was out somewhere for the afternoon. I had my phone switched off. my colleague was trying to get into the bank, our bank account, to pay a bill, and couldn't get in because the bank decided it was one of those transactions where it was going to ask for an additional code, and it sent the code to my phone because that's the phone that's registered on the account. And they couldn't go any further because they couldn't get that code. Now that's great, proves that the security works. Wasn't great for them wanting to pay that bill. So yeah, we all know that two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication can be a pain, but it really, really does work. It reduces the chance of your data being stolen by a massive amount. But also regular security audits, have people left and you've not cancelled their username and password. If it always amazes me that if you go through a good number of email servers, you'll find email accounts from people who left the company 6 months ago, but their email's still sitting there. Chances are, if they can still log into there, I bet they can still log into other systems as well. So, make sure that you do those audits and you're getting rid of that redundant accounts, redundant data. And do make sure you have staff training on data security and data protection. People don't do it by instinct. You need to get it trained into them. But I am a firm believer that GDPR done right is a mindset, not a rule set. And if you get the mindset right, the rules come easy. And also have a data breach response plan. So have a plan of, if you were to have a data breach, what would you do? And then once you've got that plan, then test it. I did some work a couple of years ago now with a fairly large financial services company, and we decided to test their data breach response plan. Well, it's fair to say the only bit of the plan that worked was the data breach. And you don't want to be in that position when it's for real. So do test it. And remember, it doesn't matter if the test picks holes. In fact, it's ideal if the test does pick holes, because that's the whole point in testing it, is finding where the holes are. So you seal those holes, you've got a better thing for the future. Okay, failing to honour data subject rights. Under GDPR, clients have rights over their data. In fact, your employees have rights over their data, including the right to see it, to change it, or delete it. And failing to respond in time can lead to penalties. Always have a system in place to quickly find and manage customer data requests. Set up a system so you can handle those data requests quickly. Train your staff to recognize and respond to those requests, because lots of people, funny old thing, but they won't tend to say, I'd like to make a request to see all my own data under the General Data Protection Regulations 2016, blah, 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 or the UK GDPR or whatever. They just say, I don't know what you hold about me. Now, good news is with the new Data Use and Access Act, you can go back to them and ask them to be more precise in what they are wanting to see, and I would always say do that anyway, because it can save a massive amount of time in what you have to look for. And you also should prove their identity. Of course, you should make sure they are who they say they are. Otherwise, you've got a data breach straight away. So set up a system for handling your data requests quickly. Train your staff to recognize and respond to requests, and ensure that you can locate, edit, and delete data where required. Which brings us on to the next thing, which is holding data for too long. GDPR says you should keep data only as long as necessary. If you're holding on to old customer records for no reason, then you're at risk. So set data retention periods for different pieces of data and delete what you don't need. And also think about, how can I be certain that I have deleted it? How can I be certain it's actually gone? And the second gotcha there, in regards to data deletion, data retention, is think as well what happens if someone does a restore from a backup, because suddenly you might find that those records that you thought you deleted are back again, and people don't notice for years and years and years, and then suddenly it comes around to bite you because they're there and they shouldn't be. So do think about that as well. So implement a data retention policy with clear deletion timelines, audit and delete unnecessary data, and where you can, automate that so that data is automatically deleted. But the important thing with all this is thinking about how long you keep data. Each piece of data should have a data life. So just think about how long you're going to keep that piece of data for. And then having no record of processing activity or ROPA or Article 30 register, they're all different names for the same thing. It's in you can't protect what you don't know you have. So start by identifying what personal data you collect, whether that's customer details, whether it's employee records, whether it's marketing lists. Then map where that data flows, who has access to it, where's it stored, and how's it processed. Then assess the risk. Do you have weak security points? Is the access properly controlled? And finally, determine who in your business is responsible for GDPR compliance. Because once you've done all that, you should have a clear picture of your data landscape, identifying where things could be and where things need to be improved, and then document all that. And it doesn't have to be an expensive document. You can just do it. I've seen lots of vapors, lots of registered post activities, even in big companies, even in a FTSE 100 company where the registered processing activities was actually held in an Excel spreadsheet. It doesn't need to be anything expensive. It does just need to document what data you're holding, why you're holding it, what you do with it, where does it go. And then know GDPR culture within your business. Make GDPR training mandatory for all your staff. I've got one client who they are a pet food distribution company. They take GDPR extremely seriously, and they have staff trained who deal with customer data and so on, or obviously know everything about, or maybe not everything, but everything they need to know about GDPR. But equally, even the people who drive their forklifts out in the yard know about GDPR, and they know who to refer somebody to if there's an issue with GDPR. And that, again, is just a big step forward. So do make training mandatory. Remember that compliance isn't just for the legal team, it's everyone's responsibility. Make sure your whole company understands how to handle the data correctly. Appoint a GDPR champion. And remember, GDPR isn't just paperwork, it's a mindset thing. I'm a firm believer that GDPR is a mindset, not a rule set. Get the mindset right, the rules come easy. And also look at, if you've got different departments, look at how you can gamify it. Look at how you can make it fun. Perhaps you have a spreadsheet where you keep a record of how many data breaches you have, and at the end of each quarter, the department that's had the least number of data breaches gets, I don't know, free cream cake for the afternoon or whatever. It doesn't matter. It can be something very small, but just gamify it. Just makes it fun. So, conclusion and next step is now you know the 7 GDPR sins, don't commit them. Implement these solutions and stay compliant. And with that, I will stop sharing the screen and take any questions. Hopefully that was useful.
There's a very good record of processing activities template on the ICO website, Keith, which is a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Rather massive, but it covers everything that the ICO would look for if they came looking at your business. And you can download it for free, and it's pretty exhaustive. And there are columns that are compulsory by law, mandatory, and there are columns that are not mandatory, so you can choose which ones you fill in. So it's very, very helpful. So that's the one we use for the ROPA.
Good point, Kate. Yeah.
I used to use that one, and I found that it was just a nightmare. So I took that as a template and edited it and split it into different worksheets so that I could group some of those fields, because then it was easier to manage and all of those kinds of things. But that's a brilliant place to start, isn't it, Keith, with a spreadsheet? I know that there's a lot of very, very expensive software out there, but it is just, I mean, it's mind-blowing. it's absolutely mind-blowing, the prices of some of it, when
Mm.
it's not mandatory to have a £1,000 a month piece of software.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Joe. It astonished me the money that some people pay for something which they could keep just as happily in a spreadsheet. It's
Yeah, in a few spreadsheets you can control stuff. I was speaking to somebody recently at a networking event, and they'd invested in a piece of software, but quite substantial business, but they'd invested in a piece of software because they'd fallen for a pitch, chitty chatting. And then they found that they had to employ somebody to manage that piece of software,
mm,
because it was so complicated, and it was so, he said it was just mind-blowing. He said we couldn't get to grips with it at all. So they had to employ somebody part-time, just literally to manage that piece of software. And I said to, are they kind of like a GDPR expert? He said, well, they're an expert in the software, and they've done these tests and they've got these certificates. I said, yeah, and do they understand what they're actually clicking, and and do you understand what they're building in there? And he said, well, so there was a clear disconnect. And I
mm.
think that for me, doing stuff in a spreadsheet means that it's easier, it's cheaper. It's cheaper, it's easier, but you then have to think about it so that you own it,
Yes.
because there's no point you having in that circumstance where there is somebody doing it. They're not necessarily fully GDPR kind of aware, but they're great at the software. You don't know what they're setting you up for. And if once in a blue moon the ICO rocked up and said, we'd like to audit, you may find that your system is telling you something that doesn't reflect
Mm.
your business is doing. Whereas if you've built it in a spreadsheet, you know what you've said in the spreadsheet, you conversion control it, so I've reviewed it every 6 months, 12 months, whatever the process you've decided on. I absolutely agree. Spreadsheets is always the way to go. I haven't figured out a way that spending a lot of money is,
No, no, excuse me. I'm with you on that. I think it. Yeah, yeah. I don't see the point sometimes in what people. I mean, don't get me wrong. Some places have to, because if they are a huge organisation, then they need to. But from your average organisation, no, it's overkill. It's. I always. I always remember a good number of years ago now, but I did some work with British Airways, and. We were chatting with some of their managers about how big British Airways was, and one of the guys went, "I knew we'd got too big when we needed HR people for our HR department." And
yeah.
yeah, and it's true. Some things are just like Topsy, it grew, I think. And it is important to keep that restraint on it. But
Yeah.
yeah, so Kate, David, any questions at all? David.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Keith. This was very interesting. Let me just lower my hand there. Hi. So, first of all, thank you, and I found it very interesting. It was a helpful overview for me. It was good to walk through these points, and so the one thing that I'm not familiar with, because I'm not directly involved with this, so I'm more of a risk manager.
Mm-hmm.
But I work I work very tightly with anybody responsible for data subject rights, as far as, and of course other things within IT. So you got to this point, so I'm being very specific here, but where you said that the data subject requests can be pushed back to the subject to ask them to be more specific.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting, only because I'm presuming that when somebody's making this request, they're asking A, for all their information, and B, it's likely, maybe not guaranteed, but likely they're going to say, okay, well, thank you, and I don't want to use your services anymore, and I'm going to be deleting my account. One
Yeah.
would follow the other often. So why would somebody only be interested in a certain amount of their data? The lack of specificity is one problem you'll have. So I'm assuming you're just going to bundle it all up and send it over anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. And of course, people can just say, no, I want everything. But often it's about trying to find out why the person is making the request. Because, yeah, as you say, some people just do it because they want to know what you've got. And then they're going to say, I want to delete it, or I don't want to deal with your business anymore. That's fine. But I'm thinking particularly like one of my clients is a housing association, and they always try and find out from the client why they want their data, because often you find there's an underlying issue of why they want their data. And in fact, they don't want all their data. What they want is the data from the last 6 months or whatever, because they've got a query over something, or they want the data because they want to know what's happening about repair on their property or whatever. And it's just that if you can narrow it down, obviously from the point of view of providing the data, it can save you a lot of time.
Yes.
Because, I mean, if I take this housing association as one of my clients, they have some tenants who've been tenants for 40 years. And so if they were to give them all their data, you're talking about a van full of information, really, which probably the person doesn't want. And so, yeah, it does now allow that flexibility to actually go back and say, are you sure you want everything? Or, why do you want what you want? And I say often it just uncovers, more of an understanding why they want the data.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, for my experience, which is my recent experience, I worked for a council. So you're actually dealing with all kinds of residents,
Yeah.
PII.
Yeah.
But so the thing is that it's not that there are many disparate systems, but there could be different places that you've got. So the average person may only have, I don't know, let's just call it a regular resident, and then you have a resident that needs, certain types of assistance, not the housing assistance, I mean, disability enablement things.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but I didn't see this as an option where you could say, okay, well, do you really need it all, or do you actually only need 6 months or a year or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks for clarifying that.
No problem. Okay. Any other questions? If not, then thank you everybody for being here this morning. And just the recording will be going out tomorrow as normal. And all the episodes of this have been recorded, which is actually episode 24 that we've done at the Data Security Forum. So if you want any of the previous ones, do get in touch with us, and we can arrange for that to be made available to you. And with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, Keith. Bye, mate.
Thanks,
Thank
Kate.
you. Thanks, everyone. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Hello, Keith.
Hi, Deb. Hi, Dr. Sai. Just stop the
Hello.
recording.
Oh, I think it just stopped.
Okay, that's we don't, right.